Stay tuned now for Gene Shepard coming up next over WOR, New York.
I suppose I should do this. I've thought about this. I'm not sure that we get this kind of news here in the big city, but they reported this in the Staten Island Advance, which is a Staten Island newspaper. For those of you who are students of New York Cityana, yeah, that's a whole study, like criminologists or, Chinaologists or, the people that like, well, there's a whole school now of study that is based on studying Jackie Onassis. I mean, there's a whole school of literature on this. And Gene Dixon somehow is closely connected with it. I can't figure out why. But, mysterious headlines you keep seeing on these, what I like to determine. Well, I actually call this myself when I'm standing in line sometimes. You have little phrases that you use yourself when you're talking about things, like, it's another one of them cockamamie things, you'll say things like that. It's another one of them stupid yahoos. Phrases that you use over and over again. What is your favorite phrase, Rich? When you describe somebody you don't like? Remember, we're on the radio. What is your favorite? Dildock? Huh? That's close, huh? That's pretty close. Well, well, everybody has his own favorite little thing. Like some guys will say, dumb chowderhead. You use that phrase. Other people say, oh, look at that knothead. That's a good one. A turkey is good, yeah, to refer to a person you do not like as a turkey, a dumb turkey. Well, that comes out of showbiz. Turkey. Turkey refers to, a stinkeruna. A bomb. Turkey is you know why they call them bombs? I'll bet even guys, any of you who are in the theater don't realize why they call them a bomb. Well, it seems that several years back, like before World War II, a couple of occasions occurred when people disliked the show so much that one guy came back to a show after he'd paid $9 for a ticket. He was so mad that he came back a couple of nights later, and he, let's put it this way, he ignited a smelly incendiary device in the theater as he was as preparing to take his seat for the second time. So, at that point, that began to be applied to various shows. This is a show that deserved a bomb. This show deserves a stink bomb. Eventually, then they started to call the show itself a bomb. Now, are you going to ask me about turkeys? Why turkeys? Why they? You know why they call a show a turkey? This began to actually, it started out on the road. The phrase did not develop in New York. Many years ago, when shows would go out on the road, a show would play, say, a place like Pitcairn, Kentucky. Okay, well, bucolic people are very straightforward in what they have to say, and straightforward in the sense that they're very descriptive. So if they went to see a show that was really rotten, really ridiculous, it began to be compared to turkeys. Why? Well, did you know that among all of the animal kingdom, especially the kingdom of what could be called the domesticated animals, the turkey is among the total dumbest. A turkey is completely devoid of any sense at all. It's dumb. Not only that, it's extremely pretentious. It's got a lot of feathers all over it. You know, that big tail and all that jazz. You'd think a thing like this would have a certain amount of dignity. No way. A turkey is pretentious but totally dumb. Doesn't that describe many a show you've seen? Oh! And in addition to that, one other thing must be pointed out about the turkey. Among the domestic fowl, the turkey is, well, at all odds, far and away, the gamiest. If you've ever been around a barnyard that has turkeys growing in it, you know that you can pop your Foster Grants right off your head with the smell of just 2 turkeys. You get 10 of them together, and buddy, I'm telling you, you don't forget it long. So this is the way they began to call it. So somebody would, Caleb would go down to see the show, see, and he'd come back and he'd tell his friend Rube, he said, "My God, that was sure some turkey," referring to the fact it was pretentious, dumb, and smelly. Okay, now you know how it starts. Did you know why they call booze booze? Okay, you've come to the right place. Now, why do I know this kind of stuff? Well, all right, I'll tell you why they call the word booze booze. That in the early 19th century, now I'm not looking at a book of trivia, I'm just telling you this out of the great general ashcan fund of shepherd knowledge. I'm pulling this one out, and it's the truth. That in the early 19th century, actually at the turn of the 18th and the 19th century, around 1800 up to about 1820, something like that, there was a very famous whiskey manufacturer in the East Coast, I believe Philadelphia, that produced this whiskey, and it was good whiskey, and it was very famous whiskey. However, his name was Edmund Booz, B-O-O-Z, Booz, and it was right on his label. It was Edmund Booz, Premium Aged in the Wood Whiskey. And there it was, see? So people, it was a phrase just like today. People will use the word, unfortunately, they use many brand names to describe the generic thing. They'll say Coke, they mean, or they'll say Band-Aid. Well, these are all brand names. They're not generic names, they're brand names. So people began to describe booze. They said, "Give me a bottle of booze." Meant booze whiskey. And it was so far and away the most popular whiskey of the period that it became synonymous with whiskey itself. Okay? Incidentally, I'll throw another piece of incidental information at you. If you can find a bottle, one of the original bottles, with the booze label on it, in other words, Edmund Booz Prime Aged in the Wood whiskey, or whatever it is he had on it, they're glass bottles, and the label is right on the glass. It's part of the glass. These things are upwards of maybe $500 to $1,000 each. So, that's how the word booze came about. He gave his name. All right, there are other words like that. That the guy's name became synonymous with the product itself. You curious what some of them are? Well, come on. All right, I'll give you one right now. Do you know that a very popular appliance in your house was named after, in its slang, named after the guy that invented it? who was a famous English inventor who invented this piece of business. All houses have it. If they don't, they have it out in the backyard in a little shed. Oh. And his name was not Thomas Eduardo Toilet. It was another name. But it's a name that is often used to describe this particular piece of gear. I'll give you a clue. It begins with a C. All right, I'll go no further. I mean, you got to use your head sometime, you dill doc. I mean, do I have to tell you everything? Would you please hit the money button?
Time somebody started something like this, Roger.
That's right, Jack. We're here with the press and Bonds stores, where Bonds has just announced a new concept in a self-help program for the city.
All right, the idea is very simple. If Washington can't come through, if Albany is hesitant, then at least we who do business in New York can help those people who help us be the city we are.
Believing the New York City municipal employee shouldn't take the brunt of our budget crisis.
And he sure shouldn't.
Bonds will give each and every city employee a 10% discount to help cut his cost of living right now.
Right, and if other retailers take up this banner, then all of us will benefit by helping those who help us, like the policemen and firemen, the teachers, the sanitation men, the hospital employees.
All those municipal employees who work for the biggest and still greatest city in America.
So any one of you, if you come to any one of Bond's 21 stores in this area anytime this month and show your city employee identification card, you'll get 10% off everything and anything you buy, right through the end of July.
You help us, so we'll help you, a kind of mutual assistance cooperative.
Right, at Bonds we're going to call it Little Mac.
What a phony laugh. I say, you're going to own, buddy. It ain't no way to get out of it. Someday you're going to own Generals. Sooner or later, you'll own Generals. Razzmatazz. It's time for me to read the copy here. General Tire doesn't claim that its tire experts have all the answers. Oh, no. But they can tell you just about everything you want to know about tires. And that's important with so many new kinds of tires coming out and so many different claims about these tires. You go down to General Tire guy, and he'll set you straight and tell you what kind of tires to buy. Guess what brand they'll be? General Tire. He's right on there with all the information you need. You'll stay on the road for change. So check your yellow pages for your General Tire headquarters nearest you and sing proudly. You'll own Generals. Yes, sir. I say, sooner or later, you'll own Generals. Wow. Well, here's a commercial that starts right out here with a leading statement that is questionable for a starter. It says, almost everybody loves elephants. Well, I suppose everybody... I'm not going to put anybody else's hang up on that. So, all right, I'll accept that. But the only time we get to see them is in the circus or the zoo, which is kind of sad. Well, Well, there's a new book out that will take you to the elephant's own turf. It's called Among the Elephants. This is a commercial, by the way. And it's the true adventure story of a young Scottish zoologist and his wife who went to live with and study the elephants. Ian there. I guess it's Ian. Yeah, it's a misprint there. Ian and Oria Douglas Hamilton fought the terrors of the jungles of East Africa to try to learn the facts of elephant life. So, Among the Elephants has all kinds of photos, and if you're an elephant freak, you'll enjoy this. It says the reviews were good, too. Harper's calls it riveting. Riveting. Oh, that's an interesting adjective. It's $14.95. That's why it's riveting. Published by the Viking Press. Yes, sir. Everything you wanted to know about elephants, and probably a lot more than you probably ever wanted to know about elephants. Among other things, it says here that young elephants don't know what to do with their trunk. That's certainly exciting. That's the kind of stuff that makes reading an adventure every way you go, right? Well, hardly anything knows what to do with anything when it's born. I mean, a baby shark grows up and it doesn't know the first 5 minutes, it doesn't know what to do with those great big old fat rotten-looking teeth. It's only later that it learns. And it learns good. Sooner or later, you'll own Generals. All right, okay, enough of that. We've done all the commercials for tonight. This is WOR in New York. And speaking of commercials, I'm watching this commercial the other night. See, I'm a great student of commercials. To me, I think the commercial is the true literature of our time. Have you noticed that they're always walking around? Have you noticed that there's always an editorial every couple of months in the more serious periodicals, like What's Happened to American Playwrights? Or What's Happened to the American Novel? Or Why Has the Short Story Disappeared? Or How Come They're Writing Such Rotten Poetry these days? Well, all these boil down to one thing. The old forms are slowly disappearing. And you'll even read, occasionally there'll be a piece that says, how come they're turning out such rotten movies? Well, movies are also disappearing, not as a commercial entity, but as an art form. To compare, say, War and Peace, or let's say to compare, we'll just take for argument's sake, Alexander Nevsky with Deep Throat, is immediately to realize that the art form has taken several giant steps down way towards the bottom of the humus heap of art. Now, that's kind of nice, isn't it? That little phrase there, humus heap. You like that? That's spelled with an H, friends. You can look it up there. It's good. Good word. You can apply that even to your office. What a humus heap that is. However, or is that a compost heap? You prefer that? However, nevertheless, when all is said and done, you never see an editorial that comes out and says, what's happened to the great commercials they used to have? Well, because we still have them. In other words, the commercial is really ringing all four bells of artistic and poetic triumph. Oh, some of the great commercials. Let me tell you, there's a commercial on currently for a very private feminine product that in 58 seconds does more for the whole field of aesthetics than Emily Dickinson did writing 200 years straight. I mean, just majestic. Sunsets, birds flying. It's tremendous. And if you see it in color, the color is a kaleidoscopic tour through all the various sensory levels of the optic nerve. Oh, how's that for a nice review there? But it'll never get reviewed by the New York Times, you see, because the New York Times has not yet gotten hip to the fact, as many of the periodicals haven't, that our art forms just are not really polite yet. Well, just like, for example, if you were a critic, now I'll just throw it out here. If you were a critic and you were writing about, let's say, American art in we'll just argue, just take a date, 1947, you would not write about one of the great American artists of that period. It's only now that Nat Hentoff writes about him. All right, Hank Williams. Hank Williams is today a legend. But if you were a critic writing for the Times in 1947, and this was at the very peak of his career, you suggested you were going to do this great piece on Hank Williams, you'd get thrown down all four flights of steps, all the way down into 43rd Street. They wouldn't talk to you twice. You're Hank Williams. Hillbilly, what are you? But now, of course, you're writing learned articles about the legend of Hank Williams. What Hank Williams left behind is the legacy of Hank Williams. Now, of course, it's popular. And I would say that by the year 1995, there will be people who will be... By that time, see, the commercial will have peaked out and will have gone into its Byzantine and ultimately its Rococo and then eventually to its decadent stages, which is what the movies did. You could really parallel it with the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. See, the early days of the movies, this was a form that nobody took seriously. That's why so many great stage performers just refused to appear in the movies in the early days. They said, this was the thing you paid a nickel for and you sat in the garage and watched. You're not going to, if you were some elegant stage actor, you're not going to go down there and make a ridiculous little flickery picture which guys are going to watch while somebody played the piano and everybody sat and ate taffy apples. Are you kidding? No way. So they, in the early days, the art form had a curious, basic, raw folk vitality to it. And all the performers that went into it, by the way, were almost invariably non-successful in other fields. It was a last resort, frankly. Charlie Chaplin's classic example. Last resortsville. This was also true of guys like Laurel and Hardy and the people we consider great today. were only doing this because they didn't make it on the Orpheum circuit, or they weren't called to be in the great Ziegfeld Follies or whatever it was that was going on the Broadway stage. So they went out, they did these little things, and so their stuff had a certain raw vitality. Well, then, because they were only doing it for the yahoos that ate the taffy apple, they weren't. No critic wrote about it. Who critic? Are you kidding? So they just did it. Well, then, as the time went on and the movies got to be bigger and bigger with the walking around public, the critic began to get part of the scene back around the middle and the late 20s, until finally the critic hit his peak in the late 1930s with very learned critics like James Agee writing very involved metaphysical reviews that were almost unintelligible to even the people who made the movie. There's a famous line of a famous movie maker when confronted with a James Agee movie, a critic of his own criticism of his own movie. See, they came rushing into him with this review, and he had spent like 8 months making this movie, this mogul. He's a big mogul with a cigar and a whole work thing. So he directed, wrote it, produced it, hired the actors, auditioned the chicks, the whole bit. See, he made it. So in came the review. See, and James Agee wrote this very flowery, involved review. It made the kind of stuff that makes Pauline Kael read like the spring and summer edition of the Sears Roebuck catalog. That kind of stuff. He's very involved, metaphysical, full with inner meanings, leitmotifs, and all this sort of thing. And the guy sit down. They brought it into him. They says, Sam, look at this review we just got. And Sam looks at it. He says, and he was the type of guy whose lips moved when he read the Daily Mirror headlines. He had trouble getting beyond the headlines, and he's looking at this thing, and finally he puts it down. He says, hey, come here. And at that point, his assistant came over, and he throws it across the desk at him. He says, what the hell language is that? He thought it was in a foreign language. Well, it was to Sam. So the point being here that at that point, movies became very self-conscious. Until today now, movies are unbelievably self-conscious, where the review is far more important than the movie itself. And this is why you're often confused. You read this great, long, tremendous review in the New Yorker or something, or in one of the magazines, and then you go to see the movie, and it's this little unpretentious, little nothing turkey, and you figure, what the hell was all the flap about? Well, the flap was about the review, buddy, not about the movie. So this is what they call a period of decadency, where we're in the period now in the arts in America and in the world that theology went through. There was a period in theological development where back in the great esoteric period of let's say monkly studies and theological esoterica, when the churches ceased to have anything to do with people's lives and spent endless centuries debating the number of angels and etc. on the head of the pin. And this is, we're at that stage now. All the while, this great vibrant art form is going full blast. and it's in the stage that, say, Charlie Chaplin was in at the days when nobody was writing about him. And eventually there will be halls of fame where people will talk about the guy that turned out this fantastic, they will discuss the concept. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. That Paysan. That's just great. Art, you have an ecclesiastical look. Art just walked in with his new beard, and there's a new feeling, I think, in the control room of reference we're going to have from here on in. We're going to expect you to bring in some scrolls, at the very least. Yeah, quit wearing them shirts. We want a tunic. Come on. And look at those Sears Roebuck shoes you got. You're going to have to start wearing those Roman sandals, like Victor Mature wore, that laced up over the calves. But nevertheless, I predict today, very shortly, when some it'll have to be in a magazine that's official. See, the fact that I'm talking about this and the fact that other people are talking about commercials is not enough. Some learned type, or at least a guy that is accepted as learned, will discover the commercial as the major art form. And then they'll discuss the heart-shaped meatloaf syndrome. Will be discussed at great length, the symbolism of this. And the symbolism of brand X will be discussed at tremendous length. And then, of course, there will be the cinema verite type commercial. Will be analyzed. And then all up and down the line, this will become a whole school of study. So Shepard is right there. See, I'm studying these things right now. And the other day, I watched this commercial scene and I says, gee, you know, it's because many of these commercials touch upon areas of your life that plays never touch on. No way. I have not yet once seen a play discuss getting your drain working. Not once. And yet this is a plague that many a person, you have this great, fantastic, expensive apartment, and all of a sudden the sink is stopped up, and all the stuff that's coming out of you wouldn't believe would come out of such an expensive apartment. But it comes right out and all over the new linoleum, and you're right there with the people again. Well, you want to know what happened on Staten Island? You thought I forgot it, huh? Well, the other day, the Staten Island Ferry's going along, doing its thing, when this lady is sitting there on one of the benches, when all of a sudden out from under the bench came 12,942 cockroaches in a battle line. And she leaped up, screamed, and within 5 minutes, the entire boat is filled with people running around stomping cockroaches. And they knew one thing, according to the piece. For every cockroach they got, there were 100 at least waiting in reserve. That's true. It's like trying to have a war with the Chinese. There's just no way. So you know, you have to report these little things. That's the way it goes. And you will not see that in the commercial. You know, the day the cockroach scourge hit the Staten Island Ferry, and it was named after a famous World War II general on top of that. So that is the boat. So I watched this commercial the other night, and I thought to myself, oh yeah, wow. And it hit me. That's right. A thing happened to me once, which is so masculine, so completely masculine, that I almost hesitate to tell this today, because, you know, stories that deal with being one sex or the other are often resented by the other sex. Well, not so much. I've never seen men resent hearing stories about women, but it's the other way. Have you noticed that? So that's called one-way liberation. So nevertheless, well, most things today are one way when all is said and done. But most people want free speech. It's the other guy they want shut up. Keeps making these dumb statements, you know. And it's really a problem. Man is always fighting his fellow man and himself too. So I'm sitting there watching a commercial, and all of a sudden they hit me. I'll never forget this day. I'm 14. I know specifically I was 14. Why I know? Well, it doesn't matter. I was 14, and it was summer. Now, well, I'll tell you how I know it was 14. I had just gotten a work permit. They had a special thing in the state where you could get a special work permit if you were 14, only to work at jobs that kids could work at. It wasn't a general work permit. It was like if you could get a job, say, helping a guy pick tomatoes or something. You had to have a work permit, see. So I got this work permit. That's how it was that summer. I had everything but a job. I had the work permit, but I didn't do anything. So anyway, on this particular day, it was like a day of all days, and I'd been out all day playing ball. In my 14th year, I was really into ball playing. I mean, really into ball playing. I mean, it was not this once a week going out and playing the Little League. That's not playing ball. That's an offshoot of Cub Scouts. Has nothing whatsoever to do with ball playing. I'm sorry, you guys. Any of you do. No. The day that I hear about a Little League team that gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning and practices until dark every day of the week, then you're playing ball. But this business of going down once a week and playing against another Little League team, that's not playing ball. That's an offshoot of the patrol boy picnic syndrome. You know, you're not ball playing. You're just, you know, it's getting the kids together on once a week where they run around and eat hot dogs. But nevertheless, I was really into ball playing. We didn't even build our own ballpark. Yeah, well, there was a field there. It was an empty field, and you know, a big, really a vacant lot, a big vacant lot, and we had cleared it and worked like beavers for roughly 3 weeks, clearing it, cutting all the weeds down, and we made a ballpark. We just got the ball diamond done, and we're playing like the second or third day on this ball diamond when 8,400 bulldozers arrived and the shopping center went up. Okay? So, forget the ball diamond. Were we bugged? Well, anyway, I was really into baseball and playing ball at all times. And of course, when you play ball 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, you wind up with your fingers are all jammed and there were times when 6 out of 10 of my fingernails were torn off. And you wind up with slide burns in very many sensitive parts of your body, parts which we can't even discuss in spite of Liberated Radio. I had some slide burns you wouldn't believe, and well, all right. So here it was. It was one of those days, you know, and I'd come home after a hard day of knocking out flies and running into the weeds after fly balls and picking stickers off of my feet and doing the whole thing, and my hands were jammed all up and hot, sweaty, satisfying day, and supper time, and I sit there at supper, and the usual routine. My mother says, why don't you wash up before sitting down? So all right. So I get up and I go in, and I pour the water on me, and I come back in, I sit down, the kid brother's sitting there, and the old man is saying nothing. See, he's got the paper, he's looking at the paper, he's waiting for supper to be served, and we were going through a period in our house where my old man had decided it's summertime, so we ought to have summertime meals, which meant that we had salmon salad, with onions and stuff. We always had salmon salad. And so we got the salmon. So he's sitting there, and all of a sudden he puts his paper down. He looks over at me, and he says, I got a present for you. I have a present for you. I said, a present? That's a very unusual thing for the old man to say at supper time. And he wasn't mad or anything. He just, he says, I got a present for you. And instantly my kid brother looks up and he's bugged. And what do you mean, present for him? The old man says, all right. He says, I have this present. So he says, would you go in to the dining room and take out of the right coat pocket of my coat, which is hanging over one of the dining room chairs, you reach into the pocket and bring the package that you will find in the pocket to me. Okay. So I go into the next room, and there's the old man's suit coat. He came home from the office. He put the coat over the chair. So I look through the coat, and sure enough, there's this package, and it's wrapped in green, official-looking paper, not gift paper. Just like if you get something from the hardware store or something, it's nicely wrapped, little cellophane tape on it. And it's a small package. It's about the size of, about the size of a wristwatch box. Well, there was an immediate thrill in my gut, see, because I was going through a wristwatch yen, too, at that time. I'd loved to have this wristwatch, see. And I thought, gee, it's a wristwatch, because it looked just like that kind of package, and it was about that heavy. So I bring it in, and I said, here. He says, okay. He said, now, I want you to open it. I said, here? He said, yeah, open it. So I very carefully opened the package. And, I said, gee, Dad, wow, this is great. Wow, it's not even my birthday. Gee, wow. And he says, no, open the package. My mother had no idea. She's looking kind of, a little quizzical about it, and the kid brother's already getting ready to yell. He wants one. So I open the package, and here in the package is a box. Whatever this is, it's nicely encased in a box. And the box was black pebble. It was a cardboard box with black pebble imitation leather on it. And I says, wow, it looked like a watch. Wow. I was already saying, wow, and look at it, it's got a great band. At that point, I open it up. Bum, ba-dum, bum. It is a Gillette razor. It's a Gillette razor. You know the kind, it's chrome, and you turn the handle, the knob on the end, and the two halves go up, and inside of it is a package of Gillette blue blades with it, stuck in this little box, and it was a package of blue blades and a razor blade. The razor, whole thing there, and I said, it's a razor. Like, what the hell you give me this for? The old man says, now, he turns to my mother, he says, how long will it be before supper? She says, 15 minutes. I got the rolls in the oven. She always made these Parker House rolls that came, with the mix. She says, 15 minutes we'll have the rolls. He says, okay. He says, we have just time. Follow me. So he gets up and he walks into the john, and I bring the razor with me. He says, bring the razor. So I walk in, and he says, now, I'm going to show you how to shave. And I says, but Dad. He says, no buts about it. He says, have you looked at yourself lately? Well, kids, when they're 14, unless they're a certain foppish type, they don't spend their time looking in the mirror. They spend their time going after ground balls, So I had a bare acquaintance with a mirror. The only time I ever used the mirror was when I had to do some particularly mean squeezing on my face. At that time, So I said, what do you mean? He says, look at yourself in the mirror. And I look in the mirror. He says, look at that. He said, you look furry. I said, yeah. And here it was. I had this faint fur all over me. See? And it was. He says, we are going to shave that off. I said, shave it off. He said, yes. Well, now, as a kid, I had gone through that phase that all kids go through when they're really little, like they're about 6 or 7, where they love to watch their father shave. The old man he'd go in there and he'd shave, man, and he had this razor, he'd whip it off him, and it was a whole thing, you see. At the time I was about 6 or 7, but up to this point now, for years, I had never watched the old man. So that's the thing my father did. He'd shave. Every morning he'd shave. He'd be in the john, that was it. He was shaving. So, it's just sort of part of life. So he says, we're not going to shave. He says, no, here's what you do. First of all, okay. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm going to show you. He said, now, here, you put hot water in the sink. You fill up hot as you can stand. All right, shh. So in goes the hot water. He says, now, give me the wash rag, washcloth there. You just take it now, and you soak it in hot water, and you wash your face with hot water, with soap. He says, now, I know that's going to be difficult for you to accept, but you wash your face with hot water and soap. He said, that's part of shaving. Well, right then, I began to have a lifelong, profound hatred of shaving, which has not left me. Because this is absolutely anti-second baseman to start washing your face with hot water and soap. So I take this thing, and we always used, my mother, of course, was the one that bought all the stuff in the house, so we always used Palmolive. My mother was she believed in Palmolive the way other people believe in Christian Science. So much she had this feeling, if you use Palmolive, you'll live longer. So I take the soap, and I rub it on my face. He says, no. He says, you got to work up a lather with it. So I rub like hell, see, and now the soap is all over, and boy, stuff was coming off of me that had been on there since I was 9, Finally, I'm all washed. And he says, no. He says, take the rag, take the washcloth there. And he says, put some more hot water, put it on your face now. So I put it on. He says, okay, now. He says, take this. He says, now you got to put the shaving cream on your face, right? So he used this, he had Williams shaving cream. He always used this Williams kind that came in a tube. Yes, it came in a tube. That's the kind he used. They still make it, by the way, so it's not out of the ancient past, yes. And so I take this stuff and I squeeze it out, see, and he says, all right, now take that and rub it on your face, see, and it makes a lather, like. So sure enough, I rub it on, see, all over my face. That's a curious burning feeling, it doesn't feel like soap, you know that feeling? So I rub it all over, see. He says, now, all right, now. He says, now we're ready to start. He says, take your razor now and put in a blade. He says, now you know how to put the blade in? So he shows me how the blade, you put the thumb down in that slot, and you push out the blade, and he takes the blade out, and he puts it in this thing, and he tightens it up. He says, now be sure you have it tightened. He says, you're going to cut your Adam's apple right off. So he tightens it properly. So he says, now, you dip your razor in the hot water. So I put the razor in. So he says, now, here's what you do now. He says, now, there's all kinds of theories. He says, you'll get to the point where you know how you shave your own beard. Your beard is going to be different from mine. I thought to myself, having a beard, see? He says, your beard is going to be different from mine. So he says, all right, now, here's the way I start. He says, I start with the neck. See, I go up like that first. He says, now some guys start up around the sideburns and go down. He says, I start this way. He says, now, you can try it my way. He says, but figure out your own way later. So he says, now here, hold the razor. What a hand is right for you? Well, now I'm ambidextrous. I really am. I do some things left-handed. I do other things right-handed. For example, I play tennis left-handed. I bat right-handed. Figure that one out. I can write either hand. So he says, which does it feel right? Well, I always use a screwdriver with my left hand. So he says, all right, take your left hand. All right, put it in your left hand. So I take it in my left hand. So he says, now try it now. Start right at the bottom there by your Adam's apple. Take one. He says, and don't take long strokes, short little strokes. See? So I go like that, see? And he says, well, you're doing good. Now just keep, don't press. Just, he says, the razor will do it itself. Now, you know that razor's built for this. And in the meantime, my kid brother has arrived. And he is standing in the door, and he's starting to whine, because he wants to do it too. Well, he had a long way to go before he was going to make the beard scene, see? So the old man says, now shut up. Don't yell in the bathroom while he's shaving. He's going to cut himself. Okay, so I'm going like that. The old man is watching. Well, I carefully shaved my neck. There was nothing on there to shave, but I did it. I carefully shaved my neck, and so I start up at the top, left-hand side, right around the top of the sideburns, and I start shaving down. Well, I got halfway down, just before I hit my chin, when I experienced the first one of a lifelong number of times that this is going to happen. The old man says, it's fine, it's normal. He says, you're going to do that all your life. I had this hickey. Well, anybody who shaves all the time knows that there is nothing that bleeds like a nicked hickey. It will bleed sometimes 8, 9, 10 years. Do you agree with me on that, friends? And sometimes, and other times they won't. But anyway, this was a bleeder, see. So he's all right, now. He says, okay, now I'm sure what you do about that. He says, now wait a minute. He says, okay. Now he takes the washcloth, puts some cold water, and he dabs it on that real quick, see? And he has a thing called a septic pencil. You ever use one of those? He reaches up. Now, this is one of those mysterious things my father always had in the medicine cabinet. He says, all right, here, you take this now. It's just a little white pencil. And I put it on the cut. It burns like hell. Stops the bleeding instantly. He says, okay. Well, it seemed like 2.5 hours later, I have completed my shave. And now he says, okay. He says, now take warm water and run it over your face. So I run the warm water, see? And then I put the cold water on. And he says, now, here's what you do. Now, you finish it all off here. And my old man believed in aqua velva the way my mother believed in Palmolive. He was an aqua velva man from the word go. He'd have loved those commercials, Okay, it's an aqua velva man, It makes a man feel like a man. He gets his aqua velva, those green stuff, very green, see? And it smells, I'll tell you, it smells like a Lexington, Kentucky House of Ill Fame on a Saturday night. The stuff is very strong, see? So he says, okay, now shake it in your hands. He shakes it, rub it together now, and right on your face. Wow! Boy, did it burn. Oh, wow. Any man that knows the efficacy of that commercial. So he says, now, don't you feel better? And I walked out of the John 10 feet so. That's right. A great milestone had been passed. Now, every man listening to me has gone through that in one way or another. He had to. The first shave. Now, do you agree that this is a masculine experience? It has nothing to do with suppressing women. It's just a fact. And so, from that minute on, see, I on the back, we had this little glass shelf, see? It was just under the medicine cabinet where my old man kept his razor, see? I'd keep my razor there. And I'll never forget, it was 6 weeks later before I needed my next shave. Oh, well, I needed that. This is WOR New York. Stay tuned for In Conversation.